All right. So I'm here with my brother Andrew, professor at Bethlehem College and Seminary in Northwestern in Minnesota. And we're just going to have a brief interview to talk about his studies. And so I just want to start out with a question. So, going through education, can you explain about what you studied?
So I majored in psychology,
Okay.
and my interest morphed into more theoretical psychology rather than experimental psychology. And then in the process of that, I discovered philosophy. And at least some parts of philosophy or philosophers are basically kind of an armchair psychologists. You know,
Okay.
they like to think about how the mind works. And so that's what interested me most in the subject of psychology and philosophy. And then eventually, I decided to make philosophy my main area of study. So going on to graduate school, PhD, studying philosophy.
Mm. Can you tell us where you did go to school?
Yeah. So my undergraduate was at Biola University in Southern California.
Okay.
And then I did my master's degree in philosophy there as well, and then went on to get my PhD in philosophy at Baylor University in Texas.
Okay. And you presented to me before your interest in Kierkegaard. How did that interest come about?
Yeah, so Kierkegaard was introduced to me by one of my psychology professors, in my undergraduate education. He was someone who was very interested in the intersection of different disciplines, psychology, theology, philosophy, and I took a class with him on integrating these different disciplines and how Christian psychologists did it, and the name Kierkegaard kept being mentioned, in this class. So I decided to look into his works, and I was just instantly fascinated by his works. Just the sheer difficulty, the abstractness of his writing, which was very different from like normal textbook reading, But it just drew me because I just sensed that there was something really profound, in what he was saying, even though it was very difficult to understand. And so I decided to make a kind of a term paper project to basically try to understand the basic foundations of his philosophical arguments and works. So that was kind of the beginning of my interest in Kierkegaard, and then that led me to go to do my PhD work in a school where there were several, experts in Kierkegaard studies.
Thank you for sharing. All right. What is your studies of philosophy or Kierkegaard looked since your time at school? How have you stayed studying philosophy, Kierkegaard?
So I tried to incorporate Kierkegaard as much as possible into my teaching.
Okay.
So right after graduate school, I was teaching mostly freshman introductory level courses in philosophy, intro to philosophy or ethics, and existentialism. So I had my students read Kierkegaard, some of the most famous works of Kierkegaard, most accessible Kierkegaard's works. So that's how I tried to keep up with it. Now scholarly, I was really not very active in scholarship, and because I wrote my dissertation on Kierkegaard, and it was a kind of a comprehensive, study analysis of Kierkegaard's works, I felt like I did not want to go on and study Kierkegaard. I wanted to study other areas.
Sure.
So, but just time and time again, it's just seems like Kierkegaard is calling me back, where, you know, whenever, you know, sometimes I get invited to do like a guest lecture, you know, in philosophy classes, and it, you know, students really show interest in Kierkegaard's thoughts, you know, and so that makes me just kind of keep up with Kierkegaard's basic thoughts, and not really had a chance to kind of engage it more deeply, you know, with other scholars. You know,
Okay.
I just have not had time, because like my professional life as a professional philosopher was cut short, you know, because of my kind of personal spiritual crisis that I had to deal with, and then, you know, kind of stepping away from academic life, you know, and then now, you know, deciding to go on a pastoral track, and, you know, being a pastor does not give you a lot of, you know, free time to, you know, engage in scholarship, or original scholarship anyway. But yeah, I feel like maybe even more than my generation, like the younger generation, like the so-called Gen Z, you know, they are very, I think Kierkegaard, something about Kierkegaard and his thought resonates with, you know, the younger generation. This sort of this existentialist thought, kind of deep probe into your own soul, basically. You know, as a Christian, especially, you know, younger Christian, thoughtful Christian men and women, I find it to be true. So I feel like maybe I need to dig deeper into Kierkegaard again and find some fresh insights that could speak to, you know, the needs, the felt needs of this generation. So I don't know what that will look like. You know, I'm busy pastoring a church, helping pastor a church, and teaching, you know, theology classes. So, but yeah, I would like to devote a significant amount of my time and life to scholarship once again. That would be really enjoyable.
Thanks
Perhaps,
for sharing.
yeah, perhaps also productive and fruitful and useful for other people. Yeah.
Amen. All right. So the question that we prepared for this interview is a little long, and so I'm going to take a deep breath, and then are you ready for the question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So briefly looking into Kierkegaard, I see things that he believed, like concern about the loss of individuality. Kierkegaard argued that modern society, including academia, contributed to a disillusion of what it means to be an individual by categorizing people into groups and focusing on abstractions rather than the unique experiences of each person. Given his stance, do you think this stance prevents nominal Christianity? You know, my parents believed it, so I do, but not practicing it or saying it on paper due to fear of parents or authority. Kierkegaard linked freedom not just to the absence of external constraints, but to the capacity for authentic choice and willingness to take responsibility for those choices. For example, when it comes to Christian nationalism, say you have a Christian nation or the like in the past, where whole societies were baptized, they would baptize their citizens at a young age. Maybe they go to church on Sunday, but Friday and Saturday night live like the devil. Can you say a little bit about if you think Kierkegaard's academic thought helps to prevent sorry about that.
Lovely background noise that you're wondering. Yeah, that's all.
Can you say a little bit about if you think Kierkegaard's academic thought helps to prevent nominal Christianity or wrongly triumphal force externally cultural pressured Christianity?
Yeah, this is a really thoughtful question. I appreciate that a lot. And there's a lot of questions within that, you know, one question. A lot of,
Hey guys,
hey,
you guys know what Jada
GPS man.
Yeah.
One of you guys? Oh, this way?
That's all right. It's all part of it.
Yeah, the second one. Thank you.
So, a little bit of the historical background would be helpful. You know, when you say, yeah, Kierkegaard is all about the recovery of the individuality of human being, you know, human existence, and that is true, and that is really kind of the core of the philosophical movement that comes to be known as existentialism. You know, so he is often called the father of existentialism. Existentialism is a 20th century philosophical, literary, artistic movement, but it is by and large secular. You know, but these secular existentialist philosophers took inspiration from Kierkegaard's thoughts, which was deeply religious, you know, and theological and spiritual, and basically made a secular version of it. You know, and so they also emphasized the supremacy of, you might say, the autonomous individual.
Okay.
You know? But Kierkegaard's direction was entirely different.
Yeah.
It was deeply religious, biblical. So then, what is he reacting against? You know, with his thought. So, what is he reacting against is this basically modern rationalistic philosophy or thought. So, the one thing that characterizes modern European thought, right, is freedom. It's a progress in freedom. So think about, and also modern period, we're talking about basically, let's say, 17th century on towards 19th, early 20th century.
Okay.
It is marked by a series of radical new thoughts, revolutions, you know. So we're talking about the scientific revolution that opened up an entirely new way of seeing nature, you know, using mathematics to understand the inner workings, the mechanics of nature, right?
Right.
And that was the key that unlocked the mystery of nature for mankind, you know. That gave us enormous power over nature, you know. We were, for the longest time in human history, we were powerless under the natural forces, right? The storms, the hurricanes, and the droughts and earthquakes and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Storms at sea.
Yeah.
But now with the modern science and technology, human beings come to have this incredible power and control over nature. And that means freedom to determine our own destiny, right? Not subject to the natural forces. And then there's political freedom, revolution and political freedom, right? Now, man, with his knowledge and a kind of increased self-assurance, you know, we feel more comfortable, confident in ourselves, and so we're demanding more freedom. You know, we no longer want to live under tyranny.
I see.
So then we have these political revolutions, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, of course, happened first. French Revolution. These are all culmination of modern thought in politics and ethics, and then of course the Marxist-Leninist revolution in Russia and China. So we. And all of these new thoughts are pointing to, in the time that Kierkegaard was around and writing, pointing towards a kind of, endless progress towards maximal freedom for mankind, freedom from constraints of nature, as progress in scientific knowledge and technological knowledge advances more and more and more, right? An endless progress in human political freedom. And basically, so there was just incredible optimism, that human knowledge, human reason would figure out, solutions to all of our problems and usher in a kind of utopia.
I see.
Yeah. And then there was a very famous philosopher, a brilliant philosopher, who kind of put a religious spin on this progress, using Christian language, right? And so this progress in human reason was also at the same time movement within divinity as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So using this philosopher's name is Hegel,
Okay.
German philosopher, and so there's a kind of optimism and idealism about human nature
Okay.
and human progress, you know. And Kierkegaard is asking, and he kind of ironically and jokingly say, okay, everybody's like so impressed with progress, you know. Everybody wants in on, you know, some kind of movement and progress, you know, to make, you know, society better, to make, you know, human lives better. I'm kind of stuck at the most basic level question about life, which is like, what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to be a human being? You know, in 19th century Denmark, where everybody thinks they're Christian because they're Danish citizens. You know, they're born into a state church, right? They get baptized as an infant. You know, they get confirmed, they get married in the church, they get buried in the church. You know.
See.
So cultural Christianity. Now, today, you know, Denmark, I think it's still state religion is Lutheran Christianity, but you know, it is very secular, right? There's I don't know what the percentage is, but you know, hardly anybody goes to church, you know, in Denmark. But back then, you know, Kierkegaard. So Kierkegaard was born in 1813 and died in 1855. So early to mid 19th century. Denmark was still a very much religious country, identified themselves as Christian, you know, Christian nation. But it was cultural Christianity.
I see.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is phenomenal Christianity. And Kierkegaard thought that this was part and parcel of this, you know, modern thought.
Okay.
This abstraction, you know, into human reason and its progress, and everybody's kind of caught up in it.
Okay.
And nobody's asking the most fundamental question, like, is that what it really means to be a Christian? Is that what the New Testament says? What it means to be a Christian? Right? And so, you know, he kind of, again, like, ironically says in his publication, like, well, everybody's obsessed with progress and, you know, where humanity is, you know, going next, politically and scientifically. You know, I'm asking the most basic question because I can't figure out even the Old Testament story that everybody knows, everybody heard, everybody understands, presumably, the story of Abraham, okay? The father of faith, right? Abraham is called by God to kill and sacrifice his son, his promised son, as an offering to God. And then everybody thinks, oh, you know, isn't that nice that Abraham had the faith to believe in God, you know, and to obey God.
Yeah.
And, but, I mean, Kierkegaard is trying to get inside the mind of Abraham. Like, if you were to do that, something like that, right? I mean, they would put you in an, you know, insane asylum or prison, or, you know, right? If you claim that God is calling me to kill my son and offer him as a sacrifice, right? And again, like, the background is this: as a modern thought progresses, and this comes, you know, this whole movement is called the Enlightenment, right? It's the 17th and 18th century philosophical, ethical, political thought that has a task to answer a question, a really pressing question about what to do with religious differences. You know, people believe in different gods, people believe in different doctrines, you know, even within the same denomination, and it leads to war, right? So, so the intellectuals in Europe are dealing with, like, the question of, now that the Christendom has been split in the West into the Protestants and Catholics, and they're fighting bloody wars, to try to convert the other, right?
I see. Okay.
So then how do we live in a society where people have different convictions, religious convictions, right? So then the momentum is towards secularization of society, right?
Okay.
A more neutralized form of religion, right? Religion takes takes a back seat, so to speak, right? In the medieval time, religion was the king, right? Religion took a central role, right? People were obsessed with avoiding hell, and doing the right things by the church.
I see.
But the church is split. There's a huge problem politically, and so the intellectuals are trying to come up with how to organize a society in a way that the religious conflicts, religious differences do not lead to open conflict and endless wars, right? Which is what we're dealing with in some other parts of the world, right? The same question. Europe was dealing with it in the 16th and 17th century. The solution was kind of gets culminated in Kant, a famous 18th century philosopher, who really defined enlightenment for his generation, saying that religion must be understood and practiced within the bounds of reason.
Okay.
So what it is to be religious is actually to be moral. Okay, and what is to be moral, he tried to define it in terms of what reason can discover and practice.
Okay.
So, so that led to a kind of a moralistic, theistic version of Christianity.
Okay.
Yeah. And Kierkegaard is responding to this. Philosophers are trying to make Christianity into a kind of secular ethics as we understand it today. But then they think that is Christianity, right?
Okay.
That is compatible with Christianity.
Okay.
And it is having its effect on the masses through cultural Christianity.
Okay.
So, if you are a normal, ordinary Danish citizen who abides by the law, who's nice to their neighbors, right? Who picks up their garbage on time, or puts out garbage on time, etc., etc., whatever. Then they consider themselves good Christians.
Okay. Okay.
And Kierkegaard is challenging his generation, ironically, by saying, "I don't understand Abraham." Because Abraham loves his son, and it is a son of divine promise. Right?
Yeah.
It's a miracle son.
Yeah.
And now God is saying, you should sacrifice him.
Wow.
So there is a conflict of duty. He has an ethical duty to love his son, care for his son, right? And that's what philosophy says we should do, right? Human reason says, yes, father has a duty to love his son.
Yeah.
And then there's a religious duty that says you ought to kill the son and offer him as a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's a contradiction. And what Kierkegaard is interested in is how is that Abraham is able to do it psychologically?
Yeah.
Because he believes somehow that he's going to go through with this,
Yeah.
So that means that he has to, remove or get rid of his love for the son. Otherwise, he can't do it, right? If he has attachment to the son. So he has to kind of adopt a kind of stoical, almost like a Buddhist mindset of all life is suffering because of our attachment to things. So we need to lose our attachment in order to be free, and lose our illusion. Everything that we see in the world is an idol, potential idol, right? We attach ourselves to it, and when we lose it, these are finite things; they'll go away, right? Then we lose our peace, our freedom, and we're wrecked with sorrow and depression and so on and so forth, right? Unhappiness. Solution is resignation. But that's not Abraham. Because Abraham believes somehow that he's going to kill his son, but yet get him back.
Yeah.
God is going to fulfill the promise that he's going to be the father of many nations through Isaac.
Yeah.
And he says, I cannot for the life of me understand this mindset. Right? And so what Kierkegaard is interested in is not Christianity of this sort of cultural Christianity of doing the right rituals, baptism, confirmation, marriage ceremony, etc., etc. Going to church, taking communion, or not even like believing the right doctrine. He doesn't have any problem with any of these things necessarily.
Sure.
But no one stops to ask like what it is to have faith, because Abraham would have had enormous amount of anxiety. When God commanded him to do this unthinkable thing. Right? So there must be an enormous struggle. So Kierkegaard has this amazing line in the book called Fear and Trembling. This is the book where he talks about Abraham. Right? It says, how does it go? I think I wrote it in my note here. Oh, yeah. The one who struggled with the world became great by overcoming the world. So we're talking about like Alexander the Great or something like that, right?
Okay.
And the one who struggled with himself became greater by conquering himself. Maybe like the Buddha.
Okay.
But the one who struggled with God became greater than everybody. And that's what Abraham was. He struggled with God. And faith is that struggle. Because God is going to call you to do something unthinkable or impossible,
Yeah.
But nobody wants to know about that, right?
I see.
So Kierkegaard talked a lot about anxiety, this kind of existential angst.
Yeah.
Not anxiety about an exam or things like that. Those are normal sort of anxiety that we have, but it is a pervasive anxiety about life itself. Like, what is a human? What does it mean to be a human being?
Yeah.
What is God calling me to do with my life? I have one life to live.
Right.
The society tells me that you ought to get an education, you ought to get married, you ought to get a job, and provide for your family, etc., etc. Nothing wrong with any of these things. But what is God calling me to do with my life? Right? So he thought very, very deeply about anxiety, guilt, despair, because we are all in sin, and he's also one of those rare philosophers that really took sin seriously and tried to explain it philosophically or illuminate it in a different way, in novel ways, philosophically. And so he was just interested in human existence at the very, very deep personal psychological level. And then of course faith, which he thinks that philosophy cannot understand or explain. So this is where he talks about the individuality of human being.
Okay.
It's not the kind of secular, humanist, existentialism, that says, I choose, this is my authentic self. I'm just playing out all my emotions.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we see these days, right? No, for Kierkegaard, what it is to be a true individual, is to be a responsible being before God.
Yeah.
One who chooses responsibility before God. So Kierkegaard is famous for what he calls the stages of life, or stages of existence, and he broadly characterizes life, lifestyles, life perspectives in terms of what he calls aesthetic, which means aesthetic has to do with art, right?
Okay.
Or originally this word, Greek word, means perceive, to perceive or to sense.
Okay.
So it has to do with our sensual not necessarily meaning sexual, but sensual perception, enjoyment. You know, so this is a person who lives for enjoyment, pleasure.
I see.
Yeah, and Kierkegaard thinks that most people live for this.
Okay.
They may be able to hold down a job, but then ultimately it's for their own enjoyment, you know, pleasure. Like they work hard, make money in order to, like, you know, go around the world, you know, spending money on expensive vacation, etc. Most human beings live like this. Now that seems like a free, you know, life, right? Freedom to do what I want, right? But it is really not a true freedom. And then he talks about the more, I guess, you know, higher kind of existence perspective, which is he calls ethical, which is choosing to be responsible to others. So this is a man, you know, if you can imagine, you know, a playboy, right, who live, you know, from moment to moment of, you know, sexual encounter with beautiful girls, and then comes to this moment of despair. It's like it gets less and, you know, it gets more and more boring every time, and the pleasure is gone, right? And then marriage looks more attractive, right? That commitment, right, to loving the other person, and not living for your selfish gratification. Right? So that's kind of the ethical notion of freedom, is choosing to be responsible for others, for another human being in a marriage, or children, or society, like patriotism and all this stuff. Right? That's a kind of a more rational notion of freedom. But Kierkegaard thinks that there's a higher freedom, which is freedom to choose responsibility before God. And this is the highest kind of freedom, because it's the highest kind of responsibility. Because before God, we are all sinners. We cannot avoid guilt. And to own that guilt and despair that comes when you recognize that you are in sin before a holy God. Right? And to acknowledge that, to accept that, and to accept the offer of grace. Right? That is the highest form of freedom. So that's what he likes to talk about, and that's how you become a true individual. You know? And the masses of Christians who are happy with their cultural Christianity, like they don't know about this kind of freedom. They're just part of the masses, part of the abstraction of modernity, abstract life of middle class life, living for comfort and security, and they don't know the struggle, the anxiety, the guilt, the despair, standing before God, with yourself, and the freedom, the forgiveness, the grace, that comes when you exist before God in truth. So Kierkegaard's definition of faith is a kind of, it is a passion. He identifies faith as a passion, rather than a kind of intellectual belief. It is a passion to become who you are before God. It's being truthful before God. So you acknowledge all of your faults, all of your guilt, and all of your foolishness, all of your despair, and just letting yourself go and surrender to God. Absolutely trust Him for His grace to restore you, remake you, recreate you. So it is in a sense, like traditional Christian thought, that Paul has given us, that Augustine has given us, but he expresses it in such a novel way, in a compelling way, that Kierkegaard is just continue to be, a fresh voice, to the readers. So that's a bit about, his notion of self, faith, and freedom, and how, his thoughts address the problem of cultural Christianity or nominal Christianity. So you did also mention something about Christian nationalism. So Christian nationalism is kind of, it's very hard to define. You know, it depends on, you know, how you define it. You know, whether it is a good thing or bad thing, right?
Okay.
But if it is a kind of, so in a slogan form, right, it would be like "Make America Christian Again." Okay, it's that sort of nostalgic thought that America was founded as a Christian nation and somehow lost its way, and it's become way too secular. And therefore, we need to take it back to the older days when YouTube podcasts and debates. It seems like it's most useful to define it in terms of, like, it's an effort to use the power of the state
Okay.
to privilege, promote, and even in some cases enforce
Okay.
Christian morality and faith
Okay.
on the nation.
I see.
Yeah. So now there's a sense in which, like, all Christians, or I would say most evangelical Christians, have the consciousness to do that, right? When we go into a voting booth, right, we are going to vote. You know, most of us think that, you know, biblical values should prevail, and so if it's a pro-choice or pro-life, you know, ballot, then we're going to choose, you know, pro-life because that's biblical value, right? Is that Christian nationalism? Well, that's a very, like, innocent form of Christian nationalism, right? But there are some people who are, I think, more properly defined as Christian nationalists, who want to see themselves as, you know, some of these people label themselves as first tabularians. Okay? That's the term that I learned, you know, in seminary when this thing was getting hot. Meaning that the American law should reflect not only the second tablet, right, of the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments. So thou shalt not kill, steal, you know, etc. Now we no longer enforce the thou shalt not commit adultery, right? That's used to, but now it's not a criminal, you know, offense, right? But anyways, but they even want to enforce the first tablet, which are usually regarded as kind of a purely religious, right? Because you shall have no other gods beside me, right? You shall not make idols, right? Like, we don't prosecute Hindus because of their temples of idol, right? But some examples of what these Christian nationalists want to do is to bring back the blasphemy law. Okay?
I see.
Yeah, and then also I've heard I think Doug Wilson, who's comfortable calling himself a Christian nationalist, say that there should be a kind of litmus test for those who want to run for office, that they should identify themselves as Christian. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is like kind of a concrete example of Christian nationalism, right?
Sure.
So using the force of law, the U.S. law, to promote, privilege, to enforce Christian morality and faith.
Okay.
Right? And I think there's just so many. I think it's just a bad idea. It's just not going to gain traction. It's going to cause lots of unnecessary conflicts with the secular, you know, part of the masses, you know. And I think it's just a very naive and misguided attempt to make America Christian again. You know, I think if we want to make Christian again, make America Christian again, then we need to stop praying for revival. You know, we need a third great awakening. But these people, I think they're misguided. That's not going to. I mean, if the aim of Christian nationalism is to make America Christian again, then that's not the way to do it. Now, I'm sure these Christian nationalists won't disagree with the goal that we should pray for revival, you know. But then it seems like, their way of trying to enforce Christian morality and faith onto what is essentially a secular society, is just misguided. Yeah, and it's going to backfire. And it's not serious. Like blasphemy law, like are we serious? Like you really are going to enforce blasphemy law in the day of the internet, and like like if anybody curses using the name of Jesus, like are we really going to prosecute such individuals? You know what I mean? So this is just not a serious movement, it seems to me. And in terms of relating to Kierkegaard, Kierkegaard would be utterly, it would be against the Kierkegaardian idea of faith, to try to, enforce some kind of cultural Christianity, back into American life. It's too late. It's been done before, and there's a reason why society went the other direction. And it's not all the fault of secularists. We need a living faith. That each Christian who calls themselves Christian, need to struggle and really grab hold of and exemplify. So that's what Kierkegaard would be into. So genuine conversion, a genuine life of discipleship.
Well, Andrew, thank you, Professor Naum, for your time and for this interview. Hope it helps. It was good. It was a good long. To sit and bask in those thoughts that I think are important for this day as we think about Christianity and politics. So thank you for your knowledge of Kierkegaard and how Kierkegaard would think about Christian nationalism today.